brought my extra old pair of glasses with me today, just in case this lens of my new pair should fall out. Took a nap yesterday afternoon and put my glasses down on the floor next to the couch. And when I woke up, went to another part of the house and came back to the living room to find Luna, my dog, chewing on my new pair of glasses. Anyway, I was able to fix them. They're more or less as good as new, but anyway, just in case, I came prepared. It strikes me that the Judeans who were there at the tomb of Lazarus to comfort Martha and Mary and to mourn with them over the death of their brother, some of them, when they see Jesus weeping, some of them say, "See how much he loved him." But some of them say, "Could not this man who opened the eyes of the man born blind save this man from dying?" A reference, of course, to an earlier story in the Gospel of John, another one of the signs that Jesus does in the Gospel. And it's not a throwaway line, because the whole story of the raising of Lazarus is not simply about Jesus' power to bring a dead person back to life. A kind of foreshadowing of the Spirit's power to bring Jesus himself back to life. But it's also a story about opening our eyes. It's a story about the revelation to us through Jesus of the power of God to transform our lives, to wake us up to the fullness of living that Jesus came to bring to the world. Fullness that keeps growing, keeps extending out into the world as the icon of God that is the incarnate one, God in human flesh, keeps becoming more and more diverse, richer and more complex in the lives of those who believe in Jesus' resurrection, who orient their lives around it, the saints of God. This past weekend, we had our annual diocesan convention. The clergy and lay delegates of the Episcopal Diocese of Northern California gathered via Zoom to conduct our governance and pray together and to elect new leaders to diocesan offices and to pass certain resolutions that had been brought up through the people of the diocese and placed before the convention for approval. And 2 of the 4 resolutions that we passed this year were to commend to the General Convention of the Episcopal Church, which is the highest governing body, the highest authority in our church, that 2 men be added to our calendar of saints. It's wonderful thing about our church, that even our saints are democratically elected. So anyway, John R. Lewis and Howard W. Thurman, apostles of nonviolence, and great leaders of the African American liberation movement in mid-20th century and later in America, were named by our convention this weekend to be added to our calendar of commemorations of God's holy people. And it brought to mind not just the strength of our polity, that we continue to seek out new names, new lives to remember, hold up as exemplars of holiness. But then we also passed a resolution this weekend to conduct a racial justice audit in the Episcopal Diocese of Northern California. To say that the work of those inspiring figures is not just something that belongs to the past, but it's a work that inspires us to continue it. Do our share of moving the conversation about justice, about the past of racial oppression and discrimination in our own place forward, so that it can be addressed, so that in our own institutions, in our own ministries, in our own life as a people, we carry on in the spirit that moved Howard Thurman, that moved John Lewis, the spirit that moved Jesus Christ. To say that these saints, like Jesus, live on in us, because the world still awaits that new heaven and that new earth that God has promised us. Preparatory to the convention, on Thursday afternoon we had a workshop led by the Reverend Canon Stephanie Spellers, who is on the staff of the presiding bishop of the Episcopal Church, and among other things, the author of several books, including her most recent, A Church Cracked Open. And she led us in a workshop to talk about the ongoing work of racial justice and racial reconciliation in the Episcopal Church. And she said something that I thought was really important, very relevant to All Saints Day. She made a distinction between an approach to doing the work of racial justice in the church that is transactional. That is where we say to ourselves, okay, I will agree to do this workshop. I will agree to attend whatever trainings the church might offer on this subject. I will participate in the Sacred Ground study circles and the other programs of the Becoming Beloved community effort that's going on in the church, in order that I can say to myself that I've done the work, so that I can show up perhaps before St. Peter at the gates of heaven. And he'll open the book, and there will be a stamp on my passport that says that I completed the required trainings for racial justice, transactional approach. So we can enter into this as we enter into so many other aspects of religious life with that orientation. What do I need to do to meet the minimum qualifications for being a Christian, a good person, someone who has punched his or her ticket to heaven? Or we can take the transformational approach and understand that whatever programs the church might offer, whatever actions we might take in convention to designate this or that exemplary person as a saint, whatever we might do in the way of fulfilling our obligations to pledge and to attend and to volunteer and to do what's required of us by the culture of the church in our time and place. Beyond that, we see these as just vehicles for our transformation, for the transformation of the world through us, which is not something that we can ever accomplish, because it is the work of God. It is God working through us, and not only through us, but through the whole communion of saints, that we might be transformed into a new people, that the world might be transformed into a new heaven and a new earth. The book of Isaiah, written in a time of exile, written about the destruction that had befallen Jerusalem, about the triumph of idolatrous empires and their doom, about God's judgment upon human sin and idolatry, also speaks of Mount Zion, of a place on the earth beloved of the people of Israel, and says, I know it's a ruin. I know the temple has been destroyed. I know that you've been carried away in exile from that place. I know that it all looks bleak, as if your hope has been taken away from you. But on this mountain, God will take away the veil that lies over every nation, the pall of death that lies over all humankind. And I will prepare a feast there, in that place, where People from every nation will gather and eat together, drink good wine, and rich food. On this mountain, this place, here in St. John's Church, in the corner of 5th and C, in Petaluma, California, everything is present that is needed for us to become God's saints. For us to be transformed. For us to be agents of transformation. Like John Lewis knew as he set foot on the Edmund Pettus Bridge, Selma, Alabama, in the face of the masked forces, Jim Crow, white supremacy, knew that he was going to be walking into violence, possibly into death, but that here, in no other place but this one, God has called me to the path of transformation that Jesus lays out for me. So he walked across the bridge. He was beaten within an inch of his life. Right here, today, with all the saints, we see that possibility of overcoming such hatred, of overcoming our own fear, overcoming even our own death by the hope that God has